And when you were asked about Defendant Williams' relationship with Rich Homie Quan by Thug's lawyer, did you hear Thug call Rich Homie Quan a bitch?
And we are back, and we are back. Thank you all for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, y'all. Please, you know it helps us out, and by helping us, you help yourself. Y'all, I led with this clip because, I don't know, twice today in court, DA Love said this. She's repeating what somebody else said about Rich Homie Quan, may he rest in peace. And just the way she says it, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way.
Why did you tell the police that you were there? Because the police asked you how you know, and I'm going to use this horrible name and word because that's what you said. Didn't you tell the police that in March 2015, Thug called this gentleman, Rich Homie Quan? He used the name Bitch Homie Quan.
I wanted to get y'all to comment on it. We also made a short about this same thing about the first time she said it, so you can check that out. So twice in court she said this. The first time was even worse than this. I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way. DA Love, if you check out our first video, which I will link, she was doing a much better job of examining Zachary. At some point, Whitaker asked how much longer she had. She said 30 minutes. They decided to go on lunch. And DA Love, she just never recovered. She never got that swing back with Zachary, and she just totally lost it. And you're going to see that here. So I'm not going to talk a lot, y'all. No court today. So watch yesterday's video, watch today's video, get totally caught up. At the end of this video, there is like a records custodian. I added that on because, hey, there's no court today. There might not be any court tomorrow. So this will give y'all something to chew on, you know, even though it is kind of dry. So we appreciate you watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and let's get into the video.
Your Honor, there was one thing that I wanted to address that I did not.
Do we need to have the witness step out again?
Yes.
Yes.
My initial intent was not to play this portion of the video of the interview with Mr. Zachary, but there is a portion of it on the August 5th, 2015 interview, starting at 3:20:33, going through 3:24:09 that I would like to play. And I don't think that that falls within any objectionable area. Yeah. Yeah, let me try and find it.
Your Honor, can I just inquire of something?
Yes.
Is the state planning, I understand they want to play this portion and they'll tell us what it is, but is the state, when they say weren't planning to play the recording or recordings maybe through Mr. Zachary, are they planning, I made this objection earlier, are they planning to play it through a different witness? And if yes, I would just like to know that because it might change how we do Mr. Zachary going forward.
Does the state intend to play his interview or interviews through another witness?
We may be doing that. It depends on what happens with Cross, frankly. But based on something that happened with Cross, I wanted to play a particular portion, and I was trying to see if this particular portion was a part that they had any objection to or had objected to, since it was a part of and not the whole thing.
Okay, maybe turn your mic back on, your lapel mic. Is it on? So that sounds like we don't know the answer.
So I'm looking for the portion in the interview. It's after Detective Thorpe comes in, 3:24:09 on the evidence reviewer.
That's at page 121, if that's okay. Now set your honor.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so thank you, Your Honor, if I may thank Mr. Steele. Okay, so it's starting on page 127, actually maybe at the bottom of 126, but I don't need to play any of the sound. It's just the image itself at the timestamps that I named. So
it's him identifying a picture as doo-wop.
yes, and it goes from him identifying doo-wop to the last picture that he identifies. And again, that starts at, okay, it starts at about 3:19:13, or a little bit after that. Actually, it's 3:19:37 and goes to 3:24.
And so it is him identifying Mr. Stillwell, and then what else?
It is him identifying doo-wop, Mr. Stillwell, Nard, I believe.
All right. And you said you didn't need to play the sound.
Right. I don't, as I thought about the concern I was raising, I don't want to play the sound. I just need to play, I just want to play the video portion. And that's not something that I'd identified as an exhibit that we intended to introduce. So I wanted to alert the court that.
And this would be to establish that he does know a doo-wop. He's already said he knows Shannon, and he does know a Nard.
No, that's not to establish that.
Well, what's the purpose of it?
He's writing on the pictures. He's spelling.
Okay. All right. Is there going to be any objection to that?
And if I could just give 1 second.
Just showing that without sound.
I just want to be make sure we're all clear on what we're talking about. So the state's asking to play essentially like a 5-minute clip without the sound of him looking at the pictures and signing papers. Is that
For now, that.
So,
For now, that.
and is it going to be, are you going to be able to see what he's writing on there?
I'm going to ask him questions about it. That's what. So you'll be able to see him writing, and I'm going to be asking him questions.
Okay. And this is to establish that he's lying when he says he can't read? Or what?
No, it's not to establish only that. It's to, I have a series of follow-up questions that I'll be asking. And if the court wants me to give everyone what my redirect is, I can go and.
I'm just trying to figure out. Okay. Is there going to be any objection to that?
The only thing I would say is my memory is that the photograph was already shown to Mr. Zachary of the person you're hearing, Nard. Demise McMullen is his name, but and he said yes, and it says like 100% certain. I may not be perfect on that, but on that recording, on the document, it's already been shown. So if that's the same issue we're dealing with, if that's really the import, then I don't understand why that we're doing this again.
So again, what is it that you're trying to show through this? What's the purpose?
I'm showing that he knows how to not only that he can read and write, but that he identified certain people by writing their names. He's spelling out their names.
Okay, well, you won't be able to hear him spelling out their names with the sound off.
I will be asking him about that. I mean, and I understand with the sound off. I don't understand. My concern is that I'm tendering a piece of evidence that is relevant to what was dealt with on cross-examination. On cross-examination, the witness was repeatedly asked about lying. I don't think there's an objection. I don't know that I heard an objection from Mr. Steele. I don't know what I'm responding to. So if the court could please clarify what I'm responding to so that I can.
I just don't I'm not grasping the import of what we're doing. That's my concern. I'm saying part of it's cumulative because he was shown that same exact picture from the same date of Mrs. McMullen or Nard. The other part, I just don't know why it's important to this trial at this time. I'm just trying to ask what the relevance is of this.
To be clear, I'm not listening to it in real time, but I'm going off of my notes in the transcript. Like, if we're showing a silent aspect of a video to show that Mr. Zachary knows how to, I guess, read and write, he's also asking how to spell doo-wop in the transcript, at least. So, and I believe that he's also asked for help in spelling the other things. So I don't know if that's going to give the jury an accurate portrayal of his mastery of, reading and writing.
I don't even know if that's what it's being offered for. I haven't gotten a clear answer on that.
I didn't know. I was trying to understand what objection I was responding
Relevance and cumulative.
Okay, so I haven't shown any pictures, any of this. I have asked him about the picture that he signed of Nard from the April 26th shooting out on Browns Mill Road. So I don't know if Mr. Steele missed the timestamp that I had, but I've not shown him that. I said that to the court. Nard is one of the people. The court asked me who are the people that he's identifying, and I said that Nard was one of the people.
So it's doo-wop, Shannon, and Nard, correct?
Doo-wop, Shannon, and Nard are three of the people that he looks at. And I'm not going to show
I don't know what the timestamps are. Are there more than just those three?
Your Honor, I believe it's those three. There might have been one more, but the point that there may have been one more, Your Honor. But because I'm not playing the sound, I'm not putting before the jury the names of the people that he's signing photographs of right now. I wanted to ask him, did you look at specific pictures, and what are you doing as you look at the pictures? And
What is he doing?
signing them.
He's signing his name.
And writing their names.
And are we going to be able to see from the video that he is writing their names? Because
Yes.
he may or may not answer what he's actually doing.
Yes, and Your Honor, I do have to, of course, the court knows I went through a very long process because I'm going to have to now.
All right. Well, you realize that there are plenty of people who can probably sign their names but not read and write, so that won't establish anything. And that if we don't hear the sound, it could very well be him writing the word D after somebody there says, the way you spell it is D-U-W-A-P. So
That actually does happen.
I mean,
but
it's up to you, I guess,
And then-
if you think that establishes anything. But so the purpose of it then would be to show that he can read and write.
that was one of them, Judge.
Okay. What other purpose?
To ask him the question of whether or not he was attempting to get people in trouble at the time that he did this. What was his reason? Why didn't he lie here?
Okay. All right. So that's relevant. Anything else?
I just wanted to bring that to the court.
No, I mean, anything else before we get him back and the jury out? All right. Let's go ahead and do that then. And you can get that queued up and
You got it, Cuba. Thank you, Judge. Welcome back, Mr. Zachary. Would you please tell the jury if you recall being asked on cross-examination about a gun that you bought that you let Woody hold?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay. Mr. Zachary,
Yes, I remember.
thank you. Isn't it true that when you were talking about that gun, you were talking about a gun you let Woody hold because you owed one of Woody's friends some money?
I don't remember.
sustained.
Did you sell Woody a gun for $1,000? Is that what you remember talking to Mr. Shard about?
subject of cross-examination either, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Overruled.
I never sold him no gun. We went and bought it.
Say that again.
We went and bought it. I never sold him nothing.
Was that after Woody's girlfriend and child had been shot at?
I don't remember.
Do you remember testifying that Woody told you that a detective told him that he could have a gun?
I ain't say the tip. I think he said gang or something. I don't know.
Gang unit. Thank you. And do you know whether that conversation was had after Woody's girlfriend and baby was shot at?
I think so. I don't know.
Okay. And that was after January of 2015, right?
Woody's girlfriend got shot at a lot of times.
All right. This particular time that
When I
you
bought
got
the gun,
yes, sir.
his houses was getting shot up.
Okay. Was that after Nut got killed?
I think like a week later. I don't know. It's somewhere early January, like
Early January? Okay.
middle. I don't know.
All right. And you were asked by Thug's lawyer whether at some point Thug stopped coming around Woody. Did I get that right?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember telling the police about needing to pay back money and you couldn't do it until you caught up with Thug and got some, but that Thug had stopped coming around Woody?
Me, I said that. I needed some money from him. I didn't say that.
You never said you needed to get some money from Thug?
Not that I remember.
Okay. And do I have it correct that when you went into that interview, you had every intention or you did not in any way want to hurt Thug because he's from Cleveland Avenue?
Not because he from Cleveland Avenue, because I don't know. I just wanted to talking.
All right. But do you remember testifying earlier that you didn't say anything or want to say anything to get Thug in trouble because you didn't want to get people from Cleveland Avenue in trouble?
I said that.
Did you? Do you remember that?
No, my head hurt so bad.
Okay. I'll try to be quick. When you testified on cross-examination with Shannon's lawyer about lies that you told in the August 2015 interview, and when you told Thug's lawyer that the information that you spoke about came from what Copeland wanted Garlington to say, can you tell us whether or not you were trying to tell police what you understood Copeland to have already told the police?
I don't remember some of it. Some of it I remember from my preliminary hearing. Some of it I remember from my preliminary hearing.
Okay. When you talked about Woody stealing Nut's chain, was that from Copeland or from your preliminary hearing?
I already knew about that.
Okay. And when you talked about Woody confronting Kel at the skating rink, was that from Copeland or your preliminary
I
hearing?
already knew about it.
Say that again.
I don't remember. I probably already knew about it.
Okay. And do you remember Thug's lawyer asking you whether the If gang rivalry with YSL began because of Woody?
I don't remember. I told you my head hurt me so bad.
Okay.
All right. So you have the ability and had the ability over lunch to have your pain medication
I'm
with you
allergic
and
to
to take it.
Tylenol. I'm allergic to a lot of medicine. If y'all would have got all these records like I
And
should
we
did.
talked about you being able to get your prescription medication.
I ain't complaining. I'm still up here.
All right.
Do you remember telling the police that the rivalry between If gang and YSL began roughly a month before Nut's death?
I don't remember.
Do you remember when Thug's lawyer asked you about the post? They shoot at us, we don't tell. You shoot at them, they call the police?
I remember he just asked me back there.
Okay. Do you remember telling the police about that after saying that you had gotten shot at on Empire near Cleveland, and you didn't know it was If Gang until Thug and D started tweeting?
I don't remember.
Okay. When you told the police, speaking about the lies, according to Mr. Shart, Shannon's lawyer, on cross-examination, when you told the police that Woody was waiting on Bloody J by the side of the church after Woody had gotten jumped 5 or 6 days before Nutt's murder, was that a lie?
I don't remember.
Do you remember whether that was something you got from Copeland or from your prelim?
I don't remember.
And when you told the police that Mooktunk and Kel were beefing about trivia, was that from your prelim or from Copeland?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to these subject matters. All this is beyond the scope of cross-examination.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. What Mr. Shart asked was, and what Mr. Steele asked was, you lied continuously. And Mr. Weinstein, they brought up things that they alleged or asked this witness if he lied about. And they essentially said you lied about everything because you wanted to get yourself out of trouble. And you were just telling what Copeland told or what you had heard from a prelim. So everything, when I'm asking him these questions, it's to confront him with things and to get clarification based on what he said in cross as to where this information came from.
Literally no one has argued that he lied about everything. And he has not testified that he lied about everything. I specifically brought his attention to certain things that he acknowledged he lied about. And now we are talking about things way outside the scope of that, and we're just redoing this whole thing again, and it's 403 and it's outside the scope of
Let's
cross.
narrow your questions to things that were asked about on cross, please.
Yes, Your Honor. When you were asked about whether all of the shootings you talked about had shell casings from guns that you owned, do you remember being asked about that?
I say guns that I was caught in possession of.
Okay. So you remember being asked about shell casings on crime scenes that matched guns you were in possession of?
That I got caught with, yes.
That you got caught with. And one of those crime scenes was Lucci's mother's house, was it not?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Now, when you told the police about being at Big Boo's grandma's house on the day Lucci's mother got shot, was that something you got from Woody or your prelim or somewhere else?
I don't know.
Okay. And when you told the police that after Shannon, Woody, and Pokey got back, someone made a call to Boo and said that they put $1,000 on the head of whoever shot up Lucci's mother's house. Where did that come from? Woody, a prelim, or something you remembered happening?
I don't remember.
And when you told the police that Woody looked scared, where did that information come from? Copeland, prelim, or somewhere
I
else?
don't remember. No.
And did you tell the police that after they got back, Shannon, Woody, and Pokey, did you tell the police whether you heard them say anything?
Your Honor, can we approach?
Yes.
When you were asked on cross-examination, specifically, Thug's lawyer asked you about the tour dates. And what tours or what shows you went to when Defendant Williams performed. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember him asking you whether you knew him, and by him I mean Thug, in 2009?
Yes.
And you said that you did, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember him asking you whether or not Defendant Williams was performing in 2009?
Yes.
And do you remember him asking you whether Mr. Williams was performing in 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember him asking you whether you went to any of Mr. Williams' shows during those times?
Yes.
Do you see, or do you have an independent memory of whether on May 13th, 2013, you were at one of Defendant Williams' shows?
I don't remember.
I'm asking you. If you don't, that's okay. You can say no. Okay. And do you know whether he was performing at either one of those shows that Mr. Steele asked you about on September 9th, 2013?
Do I know?
Correct.
If he had a show, he gonna perform.
Do you know whether he had a show on that day?
I don't remember the day.
All right. Do you know if he had a show on September 11th, 2013?
I don't know.
Do you know if he had a show on January 6th, 2015?
I don't remember.
Did he have a show on January 10th, 2015?
I do not remember.
Did he have a show on September 14th, 2017, to your knowledge?
I was locked up.
Okay. You remember Mr. Steele asking you whether you were still a fan of Defendant Williams' music?
Yes, I still listen to the music, yes.
Okay. So did you follow whether or not he had any shows on these dates?
I was locked up.
Okay, so you didn't.
I'm away from the world.
All right. When you said on cross-examination that you got information from Garlington, who got it from Copeland, do you have any memory now of what parts of what you told the police came from
No.
Garlington?
No.
Did the information you gave them about Lucci's mother's house come from Copeland or from your prelim or from your being
I
there?
don't remember.
You were asked by Mr. Steele about Thug giving you money. Do you recall telling the police about a time when all of you went to the mall and stuff and Thug had bought you all clothes?
I mean, I don't remember, but if we did, if we went to the mall and he bought us a clothes, we probably going somewhere.
How often did Thug buy you all clothes?
That's the only time I remember.
Which time was that?
Whenever time y'all talking about,
And which time were you talking about?
I don't know. See, you keep saying like him buying y'all clothes, like you got to think about it. I knew him before them, so like the clothes been in there, like we grew up together.
Okay. So did he buy clothes for a lot of people around you?
I don't know. I just know what relationship that different people had. I don't know what relationship different people had.
Okay. And when you were asked about Defendant Williams' relationship with Rich Homie Quan by Thug's lawyer, did you hear Thug call Rich Homie Quan a bitch on any other day besides the time you told police about in March?
Did I hear it for myself?
Yes, on any other day.
No, I told you I think I heard it like somebody.
And when did you first start hearing, either from yourself or someone else, Thug thugs say disparaging or bad things about Rich Homie Quan?
I didn't even hear that. I don't be hearing, like, I've been locked up all this time. Like,
Okay.
I've been
So,
away from these folk. Like, I don't remember nothing. I've been locked up 8 years. Like,
but you weren't locked up in March of 2015, right?
I was sick in March of 15. We just said that earlier.
You were not locked up then, though, right?
No.
And you were not trying to hurt thugs when you went in to talk to the police, right?
Man, I don't remember.
Okay. Am I the only one you don't remember with?
No, it's just, you keep asking me and my mind ain't processing. Like, you asking me stuff I already answered.
Okay. Do you need a moment? Do you need to take?
No, I'm okay. I'm just saying you asking me stuff I already answered. I keep telling you I don't know. If I remember, I tell you.
Okay.
I don't tell you I don't remember everything.
Okay. All right. Do you know whether it was Copeland, Garlington, or your prelim where you got the information you gave to police about Philo, D, Stewie, and Stag?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember whether it was Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or your personal knowledge where you got the information about Thug driving a Corvette in the few days before Donovan Thomas was murdered?
I told you I know he had a vet. I ain't say nothing about no. I don't remember.
What did you start to say before? I don't remember.
I knew he had a vet car. I told y'all that already.
Okay.
I don't remember nothing else.
And was that a vet that he owned?
I don't remember.
Do you know if he rented a Corvette in the days before Donovan Thomas was murdered?
I don't know. I don't know the paperwork agreement.
All right. When you talked about going to Florida in a Sprinter van that had already been reserved with Mr. Steele on Cross, did you get the information from Copeland, Garlington, or your prelim that you went in that Sprinter van with Shannon, D, Woody, and Yak?
So you asked me, how did I know who I went with?
I'm asking you whether when you told the police that, if that was something you got from somebody else or something that was true.
That was something that's true.
Okay. And when you told the police that the beef between YSL and If Gang started when Woody and Mooktoon shot Kale, was that something that was true? Something you got from Copeland, Garlington, or your prelim?
I don't remember the person I lied about.
Okay. And when you told the police that Shannon, Yak, Nard, and Duop were going to meet Bushi on the night that Donovan Thomas was murdered, was that something that you got from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or Shannon?
I don't remember.
Do you have any idea where you would have had access to that information? Other than Shannon?
No. What?
Other than Shannon.
Shannon ain't tell me that. What you talking about?
Okay. So
I told you Shannon ain't tell me that.
did you get it from Copeland?
I don't remember. I know for a fact Shannon didn't tell me that, and I told y'all that.
Okay. Why don't you remember whether you got it from Copeland, but know for a fact it didn't come from Shannon?
I know for a fact I told you that I didn't get it from Shannon.
Did you get it from Yak?
I know for a fact I told y'all, if asked, I didn't get it from him.
Okay. Did you get it from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else that on the way to meet Bushi, they fucked up and saw Nut? Who'd you get that from?
I don't know. I ain't probably get it from nobody. I don't know.
You think that was something you made up?
Probably.
Objection, Your Honor. This is all beyond cross.
Judge, thank you. Now, when you told the police that after they fucked up and saw Nut, they rolled back around and started shooting at Nut, did you get that from Copeland, Garlington, the prelim, or somewhere else?
I don't know.
When you told the police that it was outside a barber shop that they saw Nut, was that from Copeland, Garlington, the prelim, or somewhere else?
I don't know.
Did you ever see Nut on the surveillance footage that you saw on TV?
I don't know.
And when you told the police that the barbershop and Texaco are places where if gang members hang out, is that something you got from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else?
I don't know.
When you told the police that Bentley took the guns to his spot on Oak Drive, was that something you got from Copeland, Demikion, your prelim, or somewhere else?
You can.
When you told the police that Shannon and Yak told you, I just caught that in Nut down bad, did you get that from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else?
I lied.
Is that something now you're saying you made up entirely?
I already told y'all. Shannon, nobody ain't told me nothing.
Well, that's why I asked. Did you get it from Copeland, Garlington?
I said nobody ain't told me nothing.
And when you told the police that Shannon had a XB45, is that something you got from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else?
Anybody told me nothing.
Okay. So did you make that up too?
I don't know.
All right. And when you told the police that the 7.62 was Nard's gun, was that something you got from Copeland, as you're sitting here today testifying, is that something you got from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else?
I don't know.
All right. When you told the police that Nard talked about the murder after Miami, is that something you got from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else?
Something I lied about.
Okay. When you told the police that after seeing Woody staying on the couch acting worried, Nard said that nigga Woody gonna fold, he gonna tell on us about that nut situation, is that something you got from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else?
So I lied.
Okay. And when you told the police that Thug asked them, do you remember talking about Thug acting normal on cross-examination with Thug's attorney?
What you mean?
Do you remember Mr. Steele asking you whether you testified that Thug was acting normal after?
When he had me that today?
Do you remember at any time him asking you that?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay. When you told the police that Thug asked Shannon, Yak, and Nard why they killed Nut, did you get that from Copeland, Garlington, your prelim, or somewhere else?
I told you and them 1,000 times I lied. And I said it. I told them years ago I lied. So
Okay.
it ain't nothing new.
Okay. So would you tell the jury whether that was something you just made up out of the thin air or?
I don't remember. I just know I lied.
Okay. Now, is it only the things about people who are on trial now that you know for a fact you lied about?
What you mean? I ain't never said anything about nobody else.
When you talk about what you do know and what you can't remember, is it only the information that you gave about Thug, Yak, and Shannon that you know for a fact you lied about?
Cause I lied. What you mean?
Okay.
I don't understand what you saying. I know I told y'all years ago that I lied, and you know that.
And so, Mr. Zachary, all I'm asking is,
And
in
I'm
that
telling
August,
you, I lied then. I told them back then I lied.
and in August 2015, all I'm asking is, today is your testimony that the only people you lied about are Thug, Shannon, and Yak.
No, I lied about whoever they asked me about.
So you didn't lie about Booty getting jumped 5 or 6 days before Nut got killed, did you?
Everybody knew he got jumped.
Did you lie when you told the police that you all believed that Woody shot up Lucci's studio on Metropolitan?
I don't know.
Did you lie when you told the police that Rock Crew and YSL were the same thing?
I don't know.
Sustained.
Do you remember Mr. Steele saying or asking you, isn't it true that no one ever confronted you in 2017 about the things you were saying in your proffer that were different than what you said in 2015? Do you remember that?
I remember him.
Overruled.
Do you remember that?
I remember him saying something about the 2017 interview.
Do you remember him asking you, isn't it true that no one ever confronted you about things that you were saying different in 2017 than what you had said in 2015?
That may have been not you, but a different. It was covered in cross. I'm not sure who asked it.
Okay.
That was me.
Yeah.
My apologies to everyone. Do you remember Shannon's attorney telling you you never were confronted in 2017 about things you said differently than what you did in 2015? Do you remember that?
I think he said something like that.
And do you remember agreeing with him? Yeah, nobody ever confronted me about things I said different.
I think he said the officer or somebody was in there. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what
Then
name?
he asked me why the officer or somebody didn't confront me or something. I don't know. He said something like that.
Was Mr. Richardson your lawyer or your friend in that interview? That
No, he was not my lawyer.
he was there on your behalf?
I don't know how he got there.
Okay.
But it later came out that he wasn't my lawyer, though.
Isn't it true that you all were allowed to take breaks and that after at least one of those breaks, Detective Dennis came back and told you that reminded you that you had said a lot more about the murder than in 2015 than you were doing now in 2017?
I don't know.
Isn't it true that after that point, Detective Dennis asked you about what you had told him in 2015 about Duop and Nard?
I don't know.
Isn't it true that at that point you said you had heard that they were involved, that is, Duop and Nard were involved? You had heard that from Copeland, and then you said, I meant Shannon. Isn't that true?
I don't know.
Isn't it true that after you told them that Shannon came to the apartment after the murder and told you about the murder, they pressed you on exactly what Shannon said to you?
You say, is it true that he told me? You asked me, I don't understand that question.
Isn't it true that during the 2017 interview, when you told the police and people with the DA's office with Mr. Richardson present that Shannon came to the apartment after the murder and told you something about the murder, you were asked what exactly Shannon said to you, and you said, I don't want to talk about it.
It was a lie.
Okay.
I don't know. I still don't understand the question.
You were pressed on what exactly Shannon told you in the 2017 interview.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay. Isn't it true that when you said you were not pressed or you were not confronted with differences in your story, that what you said about not being confronted wasn't exactly accurate? In other words, when you said something different, the police did ask you, wait a minute, what about this? You said it differently over here.
I don't remember. You would have had to show me for me to know. I don't remember.
Okay.
But I don't think they confirmed. Ricky had asked y'all 2 years ago, did y'all have a video he could see? Y'all told him no. Y'all told me it wasn't no interview, just transcripts.
Okay. And during that 2017 interview, when you were looking at pictures of Shannon and Duop and Nard, isn't it true that you signed your name and wrote Shannon's and Nard's and Duop's on their pictures?
I don't remember, probably did.
When you were asked about the Little Wayne bus shooting on cross-examination, is it your testimony today that you remember events that happened that night?
I don't know. Like, y'all been asking me all these questions, like, I don't know.
Do you remember telling detectives in the 2017 interview that people didn't need to get the gang's permission in order to carry out the Little Wayne bus shooting?
I don't remember it being said like that or something. I don't know.
Do you remember being asked on cross-examination about the Infinity that you were in, that you rode inside with Copeland?
I remember y'all saying something about it.
Hmm?
I remember somebody said something about it.
Do you remember, I believe it was Mr. Steele, if it was not, correct me if your memory is different. Do you remember Thug's lawyer asking you whether the information you got about that Infinity came only from Copeland?
Yes.
Do you remember today whether the information you got about that Infinity came only from Copeland?
Yes, I told Woody. So I never saw somebody else in the car, but Woody, he told me about the car.
Is there anything in particular about that causes you to remember it as opposed to other?
I remember the car because I remember we wrecked the car.
And was it Woody who told you that Thug's manager rented it?
Yes. I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't know. Woody said it was Thug rental car or something. I don't remember. I told him I know something in that car though. I told him I know something. Nobody in the car but Woody.
You told the jury earlier that after a certain point that Thug stopped associating with Woody. You said something like that on Cross. Do you remember that?
I think I said he stopped coming around all the negativity. Like it was so much going on. I think I said that.
Do you remember specifically talking about Woody and Thug not hanging around Woody?
Yes, because I said he had a lot going on.
Do you remember when that was that you remember Thug stopped hanging around Woody?
I don't know.
Okay, generally speaking, would you say it was around May 2015?
I think Woody was already locked up, man. I don't know.
So does that mean it probably happened before that or after that?
I don't remember. I just know I think Woody had got locked up summertime, so I don't remember.
Do you know whether Woody actually talked to Thug about getting his bond paid in June 2015?
June, I was locked up, so I don't know.
Okay, you were asked about Thug and Woody's relationship. I'm just asking you if you know anything about.
June, I was locked up. So
Okay, so that's a no?
I was locked up. I mean,
When you're locked up, does that keep you from getting information
Yes.
about other people that are locked up?
yes,
So were you locked up federally?
no,
Were you locked up in Fulton County?
yes.
So if you were locked up in Fulton County and Woody is locked up in Fulton County, do you all have the ability to talk to each other or do you not
No.
have access?
All on different flow.
Okay. Does being on a different floor keep you from having access to other people or talking to other people in the jail?
Yes.
Just one moment. Do you not remember getting, speaking with Sledge from inside the jail or Monkton? Why?
Me and Mook, I don't think if I talked to him and he was on the street, I don't even think I talked to him. What time you talking about?
While you were in the jail and he was in the jail.
Probably went to court, yeah.
And what about Garlington? You remember getting communication from Garlington while you all were both in jail?
He and Garlington and Sledge was on the case together. We go to court together.
Okay. Are they the only people that you talked to while you were in the jail that were in the jail with you?
I don't know. Probably people in my dorm, I don't know.
All right. What did you say?
People in the dorm, probably.
You were asked on cross-examination about a picture of Shannon taken the days or taken sometime before January 10th, 2015. Do you remember Mr. Steele asking you about it? Do you remember being shown a photograph of Shannon standing in front of a window?
Yeah, I remember that picture. I remember that picture.
And do you have any independent knowledge of when or if that was placed on any social media sites?
I think I remember. I think I took that picture. I
Okay.
was thinking about it.
Just the
more.
picture, though.
When I saw it, I remember the picture for some.
Did you post that on your social media site?
No,
Okay. Now, when you were asked on cross-examination about Antonio Sledge being drunk and Garlington being high and you being high on April 28th, 2015, were you telling the jury everything that you remembered about that night when you spoke with Shannon's attorney on cross-examination?
did I what?
Is that all that you remember about that night on April 28th as you sit here today? April 28th, 2015, that Monkton was drunk.
Your Honor, I was gonna let it go, but I'm gonna object to the misstatement of the testimony. His testimony was not that Mr.
Sustained. Do you remember anything else about the night of April 28th that Mr. Sharp asked you about on cross-examination regarding Sledge being drunk?
I think I told him I don't know. I don't remember. I think I told him I was high myself, so I couldn't really tell.
And what does that type of high do to your ability to remember?
Xanax.
Okay. What does that do for you and for your ability to remember?
A lot. I might be on 3-4 at a time.
And does that cause you to forget things?
Yes.
Okay. So if you remembered that it was only you, Sledge, and Garlington, at what point did the high wear off to allow you to remember that?
Because I remember who I got in the car with.
Okay. Do you know what Trontavia Stevens was doing during that time?
No.
You were asked whether you went to Arrowhead Pond with Copeland and Sledge. Do you remember that?
I remember telling him I didn't remember if Sledge was with us.
Okay. Do you remember testifying on cross-examination that you wanted to convince Gaither and Dennis that you were telling the truth so that you could get out of jail?
I remember. I don't remember. I told her, asked me all these questions. I don't know.
Do you remember when
you were shown a clip of Gaither coming into the room saying, y'all been calling me and now I'm here. You remember that? Okay. Now, do you remember being asked whether you wanted to meet with Gaither so that you could get out of jail?
I remember me saying I ain't called them. I'm saying that.
Okay. Do you remember saying you wanted to clear Sledge of the shooting?
I thought that was I was doing, but I was told you I was young.
Did you lie when you told the police that the phone number they showed you was not yours?
Oh, Mama.
You remember when you were asked on cross-examination whether you lied when you said you weren't involved in the April 28th shooting?
Who?
You remember when you said on cross that when you first sat down, you said, I wasn't involved. I ain't have nothing to do with that shooting.
I remember saying I lied. I don't understand what you're saying. You gotta ask it again.
Okay. You remember saying you lied in the August 5th, 2015 interview. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you lie when you told them or confirmed for them Demikion's phone number?
Your Honor, outside the scope of cross.
Sustained.
Did you lie when you told them that the phone number they had was not yours?
Outside the scope of cross.
Sustained.
Do you remember when you told them when you first sat down, you were making stuff up as you were going on? You remember saying that on cross?
Yeah.
At what point did that change, if at all?
What you mean, did it change?
Well, you said at first I was making stuff up as I was
I
going
still was
on.
making stuff up.
Okay, so are you saying that you made stuff up throughout the whole interview on August 5th, 2015?
Made stuff up and said stuff that I had already heard. I told y'all that.
Okay. And when you said that you wanted to take the guns out of your hand and put them in someone else's hand, is that what you were trying to do throughout the August 5th interview? Just take guns out of your hand? By the time that you got to the 2017 interview, was your goal in that interview the same thing as your goal was in the 2015 interview?
What was my goal? Was it my goal?
Right.
I don't remember.
Do you remember whether you went into the 2017 interview with the intent to tell stories on people?
I don't remember.
Well, do you remember?
Did I tell stories?
Uh-huh.
I told stories, yes. Lies.
All right. And was there any reason that you told for these particular lies that you claim you told? For what reason were you telling lies in 2017?
Because I had already told the lies before.
Okay. And so the lies you told in 2017 were because you had already told them? Is that what you're saying?
Objection, that's asked and answered.
You're not asking. Is that what you're saying?
What you mean? Like,
why did you tell the lies you're now saying that you told in 2017?
because I lied. I don't know. I didn't know I lied. I don't get what you're saying. Like, I don't understand.
And the lies in 2015 that you told, did you tell them for any reason other than what you've already given to the jury?
What you mean?
The things that you said in the August 2015 interview that were not true. The reasons that you told them, even though they were not true. Are those reasons, have you told all of those reasons for telling those lies as you put them to the jury?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Just one second. Your Honor, I think that that's all I have at this time with this.
All right, Mrs. Sharp, Mr. Weinstein.
Yeah, I have some thoughts, Your Honor.
All right.
Mr. Harvey has corrected me that I have reasons. Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
I didn't hear what you said before.
Well, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hey,
Your head hurt? You're going to be able to answer my questions?
if I know him, yeah.
Can you lean forward just a little bit? Yeah, if you know them, that's all I'm asking, okay? So on redirect, Ms. Love asked you a lot of questions about the sources of your lies, okay? The lies you told back in 2015 and 2017. So let's get into that a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Let's talk about the play that you testified to that you got from Garlington, okay? Remember the play?
I don't remember it.
That play you testified to that you got from Garlington, that was about the murder of Peanut, Donovan Thomas, right?
That's what, yeah.
Okay. And that play was something cooked up between Garlington and Woody, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, as to vagueness.
Overruled.
Sorry, I didn't hear your answer.
Yes.
Yes, the play was cooked up between Garlington and Woody?
Woody put Garlington in it. It was something Woody had.
Something Woody had. And Woody came up with that play in order to take attention away from him.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
You don't have to answer that question. But that was a scheme between them to come up with the story that you would use, correct? They planted that story with
Objection, Your
you.
Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
The story that they came up with, that they told you, that Garlington relayed to you, was about Shannon and Yak and Duop and Nard being involved in Nutt's murder.
It was, I don't remember all the detail, but it had something to do with them, y'all.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
I don't
that.
remember all the detail, but it had something to do with it.
It had something to do with that, with the murder of
Yeah.
Peanut, with the murder of Donovan Thomas. Okay. And that story was intended to cover up Woody's involvement in that murder.
Objection, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Did Garlington tell you why he was coming up with that story?
Why Woody was coming up with it?
Yeah.
He's just like, Woody got him in some bullshit.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Sustained.
Well, Woody has been named, Your Honor, as an unindicted co-conspirator. It's a statement of a co-conspirator.
Your Honor, first of all, Your Honor, this is a whole, he's asking about Garlington. He's not asking about Woody. And if this is a matter that needs to be talked about, I don't think it's proper to do it in front of the jury.
Your question was about Garlington.
Yes. Okay. So the story you got from Garlington, that's the story that you ended up relaying to law enforcement, to Gaither and Dennis in
Objection.
2015.
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
You've been asked repeatedly by the attorney for the state, by Miss Love, how various lies that you told benefited you. You remember her asking you that just now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you're sitting over here right now instead of over there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you think that that's a benefit to
Your
you?
Honor, objection.
Do you view that as a
Hang
benefit?
hang on.
Okay,
hang
I'm
on.
asking him if he
I
views
know,
that
and
as a
there's an
benefit.
objection on the floor, which I haven't been able to hear yet. So wait and let me hear
My
it and
apologies, Your
rule on
Honor.
So objection as to misrepresentation, vagueness, when the question is, do you think it's a benefit to you that you're over there and not here? As it relates to the interview in 2015 and 2017, I would ask for clarification about what it is that he was getting a benefit from.
Overruled.
Okay. I'll repeat that question to you. Do you view it as a benefit to you that those lies that you told in 2015 and 2017 put you in that witness stand instead of over there as a defendant?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
I ain't benefit off none of it.
You didn't benefit off any of it? You'd rather be over there?
Objection,
Man, ain't no
Your Honor,
difference.
improper.
Sustained.
Are you a defendant in this case?
Objection, relevance.
It's directly relevant to his motivation. Are you a defendant in this case?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Steele.
Very briefly.
All right.
Very briefly. You were asked about what I call the rodeo tour, but I'm talking about March, April 2015.
Yes.
Okay. Travis Scott and Jeffrey Williams, or Young Thug, are performing, right?
Yes.
You were asked if Jeffrey was the headliner or was not the headliner. You remember that?
Yes.
Headliner means what? Tell the jurors.
I don't know. Probably, I think like the main, I don't know. I think like the main person or something.
Is it fair to say that Jeffrey or Young Thug by this time is a big attraction in music?
Objection, asked, answered, and relevance.
Came up on recross.
I know, but given the objection sustained.
When you were there, if you saw the crowd, did Jeffrey and
Objection,
Travis Scott play
relevance to the
together? Is
crowd.
my question.
Say that again.
Yeah, when you saw the crowds at the rodeo tour, did Jeffrey and Travis Scott perform together?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance to
Sustained.
I think, okay, that's fine. All right. You said you were asked specifically, did Jeffrey buy clothing for a lot of people? Do you remember that question on recross examination?
Yes.
All right. Is it true that Jeffrey did buy clothing for people, the Cleveland Avenue park?
I told you, like, that was like, it wasn't that new. Like, everybody about, like, yeah.
Okay. And were you aware that Jeffrey did clothing drives all over the country?
objection, relevance.
It came up on
Sustained.
cross.
Doesn't mean it's relevant.
You were asked, and it was worded this way, that Jeffrey stopped hanging around with Woody. Remember those questions on recross?
Yes.
From your vantage point, were people always trying to be around Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor, vague and speculation. He can
Overruled.
Did Jeffrey allow people to take pictures with him
objection, relevance.
when they
Sustained.
from your vantage point, did Mr. Copeland or Woody, did Jeffrey go to him in any way, or was Mr. Copeland trying to hang out with Jeffrey?
Objection, relevance beyond the scope of redirect.
It was on redirect.
Overruled.
Yeah, Copeland used to come around, yeah.
Okay. You were asked again on redirect about a supposed tweet of, and I'm not quoting it, but something like, we shoot at them and don't report. They shoot at us and report. I'm not saying that's a quote. Have you ever seen a tweet like that?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered on cross.
That was my question.
All right. Mr. Short, have you made a decision? Do you have any recross? All right. You are now free to go.
And put this on my leg.
Yes. They'll take care of that. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Mr. Ricardo from the stand.
Okay.
My name is Ricardo Leal. It's Ricardo. First name spelled Leal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Leal. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, sir.
Can you tell the jury where you work?
Yes, so I work for T-Mobile Corporation, which is a mobile phone carrier.
How long have you been with T-Mobile?
So I started with T-Mobile back in April of 2020. There was a merger that transpired on that date. Prior to that, I worked for Sprint Corporation, which was another telephone company. And so I worked with them, basically started with them in 2002.
Was the merger between Sprint and T-Mobile?
Yes.
What do you do for T-Mobile?
So I serve as a records custodian when subpoenaed. My job title is testifier. So basically I authenticate records, explain records, how they're kept, in the normal course of business, do a lot of reviewing records, those types of things.
How many trials have you testified in?
So I've testified in over 450 in my tenure. I've been doing this part of my job for quite some time.
Do you travel across the country, or do you have a specific region that you cover?
All throughout the United States and other places as well.
So to become, what did you do, let me take a step back, before you began working with Sprint before it merged with T-Mobile?
So when I worked at Sprint, I would have been an analyst, essentially. Subpoena analyst is what they called it. So my job function was to review legal demands, verify that legal demand, then send out the information that is being asked for through legal process. However, the requester was asking for it. So essentially, that's what I was doing for a number of years. And then I headed up a team that was an immediate response group, that they could get their information sooner by paying a fee. And then I transitioned into the job that I'm currently doing. But at the time, it was with Sprint.
And would subpoenas from law enforcement agencies be one of the requests that you would review when you were an analyst?
Correct. That would be one of the formats. So subpoena, search warrant, court order, search warrant having the most available. They would be able to get the most information with the judge's signature. That's kind of how that process works.
What type of documents did you get familiar with as an analyst responding to those legal requests?
So mainly was call records pertaining to subscriber information, the call detail records, which is the network information that could have other information like cell tower information, billing records. That's the main things that were being asked for. And still to this day, there are some other records that we have as well. But those are the main things. Later on, as the progression became more prevalent, text information was being asked for, data, because your phones became user-friendly to be used for search engines, those types of things, for data. So those were often asked for too.
Can you differentiate the call detail records from the other records you've described for the jury?
Sure, absolutely.
How would you describe or differentiate them?
So the call records would show the calls that were taking place. It will have the different numbers. It will also depend on what type of call record. It will show duration time. It'll have dates. Also tower information, if that was asked for, that information would be within the record. Also, on the format, when we send the information out, it shows what is being asked for through legal process. Like, it gives exact accounts of the information that's being sent out.
Now, in working with Sprint, was it through experience or training that you became familiar with these records and what they contain?
So it was on the job training. And over time, I would be answering questions with whoever was asking for the information. So it took a lot of me trying to get an understanding of what I was looking at. And then over time, I had to learn the T-Mobile records as well, which was more of a formal training versus how I started at Sprint. It was a different time, back in 2002. But yeah, quite a big difference between 2002 and 2020.
Fair enough. Can you describe for the jury what training you had to get familiar, coming from Sprint, with T-Mobile records?
So there was a training that happened. It was during COVID. Basically, it was several days of going through the formats of how the records are kept at T-Mobile and the information that T-Mobile carries and how their information is kept in comparison to how the information is kept at Sprint. So there was kind of like a dual training going on where the T-Mobile folks were filling us in on their info, and we were doing the same to them with the Sprint information, because two different networks, information being kept, all similar processes and everything, but the content was in different formats and it was kept differently according to time.
Now, you had mentioned subscriber information as documents that you sometimes have to discuss. Can you
Yes.
describe what is contained in Sprint or T-Mobile subscriber information records?
Generally speaking, the subscriber information would contain the account information with the account holder and or subscriber if the subscriber of the phone is different than the account holder. Basically, it would have identifying information if it was not a prepaid subscriber. If it's a postpaid subscriber, there's a verification process that takes place. And essentially, in that verification process, they're enabling the person that wants to subscribe to the phone to be able to get billed. And so they do a credit check. Unlike a postpaid subscriber, they'd be paying up front, or a prepaid subscriber, pardon me, they would be paying up front. And so those are some of the differences, but the elements within the subscriber information could have other information like the type of account, the equipment or the handset number that is associated with the telephone number. It has other identifying information that's network information that also coincides with how the layout is for the subscriber information. But those are some of the things. It would have like activation dates, like when the account was activated, when the number was activated within that account, if it wasn't the only telephone number. There are accounts that could have multiple numbers within a specific account, if that makes sense.
When you were just discussing prepaid versus postpaid for subscriber,
Yes.
how is the name created or chosen for prepaid versus post?
So with prepaid, it could be anything. So it could be what that person wants it to read. It's non-verified. So basically there's no verification process that takes place. If I wanted to open a phone and get my own phone, I could say, I wanted to say Donald Duck. That could be on there. So that's just the way it is. Because it's non-verified, like postpaid subscriber, there's no credit check being run. They're not showing an ID or anything that has identifying information. There's no requirement. So that's how that works.
You've also mentioned, and we've briefly discussed call detail records. Are call detail records kept in the regular course of business with T-Mobile?
Yes, they are. And they're kept for billing purposes.
Is there any other purposes that, well, I'll ask another question. I'll come back to that. Is any of the information include cell site tower information?
Yes, that's part of the network information. And so the network information would include cell tower information as part of the things that were transpiring within the network prior to the billing process.
And with subscriber information data, with call detail record data, and cell site tower data, what are the various purposes or reasons why T-Mobile keeps those documents in the regular course of business?
So it's mandated that we keep this information by the FCC for a certain amount of time, but we have to be able to bill our customers. So that's why the network information, we keep that. From that, we would be able to ascertain the billable calls for each customer. And then they would be able to send that bill out. Now things are different with unlimited. Oftentimes there's not as much information that's being sent out because of that unlimited plans, but they still generate bills because it's mandated by the FCC. It's also network optimization. They use the information that we have to be able to review if there's any disputes for calls that didn't take place or those types of things. That was more of a thing back when each call was being accounted for, right? You were getting numerous amounts of calls, extra fees, like those types of things. But those are two of the main reasons. And then the subscriber information is kept for a more lengthy period of time because to be able to see in a timeline the subscribers that had different numbers for an amount of time.
Now, before you came testifying here right now, did you and me meet and go over some documents?
Yes, we did.
Did that include any CDs or discs with information on them?
Yes, I reviewed a handful of discs as well as all the information within those discs.
And did you make any markings on those discs after you reviewed them?
I did on the outside envelope.
Now, Your Honor, I'm going to approach the witness with what has been marked as State's Exhibit 515 Yankee through 519 Yankee. And for both 515 through 520, there is a Yankee and a Yankee Alpha corresponding with each number. And so I'm also, Your Honor, approaching the witness with 520 Yankee through 522 Yankee. And for those last three, there is a 520 Yankee Alpha and a Yankee Romeo for those last three. I've handed the witness those exhibits. When you're done reviewing them, sir, just look up and let me know. What are those that I've asked you to look through?
So these are all requests that were sent out through legal process with Sprint or T-Mobile. So there's several of each, but it's mainly the disc and then subscriber information and some certifications within the packets.
Now, I'll start with 515 Yankee through 518 Yankee. Are those, or 515 Yankee, 516 Yankee, and 517 Yankee, are those three Sprint?
Yes, they're all Sprint correspondence, so the records that were sent out through the Sprint process.
And are they a fair and accurate depiction of the subscriber call detail records and cell tower information for those corresponding records?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state will tender into evidence 515 Yankee, 515 Yankee Alpha, 516 Yankee, 516 Yankee Alpha, 517 Yankee, and 517 Yankee Alpha.
Those are admitted.
Now, sir, do you also have 518 Yankee, 519 Yankee before you?
Yes, I do.
And do they have a corresponding alpha that is printed?
Yes,
And are those T-Mobile records?
they are.
Are they a fair and accurate depiction of the subscriber information, call detail records, and corresponding cell site information for those T-Mobile records?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would tender into evidence State's Exhibit 518 Yankee, 518 Yankee Alpha, 519 Yankee, and 519 Yankee Alpha.
You're admitted.
Now, was there also, with the last documents, and by last, I mean 520 Yankee through 522 Yankee, and those three numbers have a corresponding Alpha and Romeo? Do you see those three, sir?
I do.
Did you and me also go through those documents?
Yes, we did.
Do those documents have a business record certification alongside them?
They do.
Your Honor, pursuant to the business record certification, the state would tender State's Exhibit 520 Yankee, 520 Yankee Alpha, 521 Yankee, 521 Yankee Alpha, and 522 Yankee, 522 Yankee Alpha into evidence, and the corresponding business record search for the record are the numbers with the Romeo.
All right. Those are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, I want to start with, we're going to go in order, sir. So 515 Yankee, I wanted to talk about those first.
Okay.
And specifically, do you have before you a 515 Yankee Alpha?
Yes,
Can you tell the jury what 515 Yankee Alpha is to begin?
I will. So this is the response pages for the request. Basically has the information for the person that extracted, that was in charge of getting the information through the legal process within my group at Sprint. It has the date of the correspondence, as well as we generate a case number, but it has the person that requested the information, has their information on there as well. And then it begins with basically on page 2, the dates for the information, as well as the number for that specific request.
And Your Honor, I'm going to publish 515 Yankee Alpha for the jury. Now, can you explain for the jury, what is this on the top left when it has a Sprint case number? What does that indicate?
So with every request that is received, a Sprint case number, or T-Mobile has the same type of thing, but a number is generated that correlates with that specific request. And so the case number is 2015, in this case, -032151. So you could look up the information that was sent out. We would have a record of it. That's basically what that is.
And what is the phone number associated with 515 Yankee Alpha?
The phone number is 678-278-5991.
Now, what agency requested these records from Sprint?
It was the Atlanta Police Department.
And who specifically with the Atlanta Police Department requested these records?
It was Ari Bleifeld.
Now, I'm scrolling to page 2 of 515 Yankee Alpha. Who was this account? What person was the bill and account name under?
It was under the name of Kenneth Copeland.
And what was the address associated with this phone record?
878 Oakland Drive, Southwest, Atlanta, Georgia, 30310.
Now, what was the date range for this request?
It was January 1st, 2015 through February 6th of 2015.
What date was this account created?
So the account was established on October 29th of 2014.
Now, I wanted to ask you, if you turn to the third page, do you see a line titled equipment?
Yes.
Now, what is that? What does this tell you?
So it basically shows the equipment that's being utilized with the electronic serial number. And so each handset has a ESN or electronic serial number that correlates with that handset. The phone carriers keep track of that information. If there was a change, it would also show if a handset was activated or canceled for whatever reason. I get a new phone, it would show that information.
Now, are you able to tell if this is a pre or post-paid account? And if so, how?
Yes. So with Sprint, in the network access identifier, which is close to the top of the page, or just under where it says effective, it has the name of the subscriber, and it'll usually have a numeral next to it. And then it has, at at sprintpcs.com. When I see that, I know that it's a postpaid subscriber. It's a verified subscriber. If it was prepaid on the Sprint network, it would have something like, oftentimes it would be like Boost Mobile. Boost would show up instead of Sprint PCS, or Virgin Mobile. Those were some of the prepaid components of Sprint, unless it was with a reseller. And so if it was with a reseller, they would have the subscriber information if there was any on a postpaid or a prepaid subscriber rather. So a non-billed subscriber.
Now, sir, did you see, and I'm trying to show this on the screen for you as well, where it has features with a number of asterisks?
Yes.
Right above that, where it says effective 12/15/2014, and then it has expiration. Can you describe for the jury what that means?
So basically that phone was effective. It was being utilized from December 15th, 2014 through the date searched. So for the entire date range, it was an effective active number, essentially, or phone.
Now I'm going to scroll to, and before you see where it has request type in bold, then it has a date range.
Yes.
Is this the date range that corresponds with when these records were requested for?
That's correct.
And it was January 1st through February 6th of 2015.
Yes.
Now, the disc that before you, that's 515 Yankee.
Yes.
Is that the records that correspond with this subscriber information?
That is correct. It's all the information that was asked for outside of this subscriber information. Basically, the call detail records as well. They can be quite voluminous. So.
Now, I'm going to publish for you 515 Yankee.
Okay.
You let me know if you can see it on the screen there.
I can see.
Now, is this what you and me reviewed before coming into court?
Yes.
And I wanted to walk through for the jury so they could, what these contain. So this first Word document, what is this document?
So that's most likely it's the subscriber information, or it's the help aid to interpret the information that when we send it out, we send out a help aid always with the records.
I meant for it to, give me 1 second. I thought it would publish on your version, but it did not. Can you see it now?
Yes.
What is this document?
This is the help aid, or the keys to understanding. And so basically it would break down all the information that is being received as far as the call detail reports.
And if I want to, do you see this column where it says cell sites?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury, what does this information and why is it included in these type of requests?
Sure. So basically it's highlighting all the different switch information for all the switches that are kept throughout the United States, as well as the identifying information. So it's called a network identifier. All that information is part of the record. So basically this is an overview of all the towers in the United States. But for the specific record that you look at, as far as the call detail record, depending on where that phone's operating, it would have those specific network element IDs for that area. And so with Sprint, you would have a list that coincides with it. And then you would be able to determine the latitude and longitude for that specific tower that works in conjunction with the switch. So basically, a switch conducts the switch to happen from one telephone number to another telephone number. 100 years ago, it was an operator. There was a person that would physically switch a phone to get to its destination. With the network, it's a system. And so it does the switching in the system. That's pretty much how that works. But we give you the overview of all the towers. So you can be able to identify the information, as well as inside of this information, it kind of explains the different nuances of the towers as well and how they're set up.
Now, for example, with the records that T-Mobile, or in this case Sprint at the time, would send back, if a law enforcement agency asked for phone records for 30 days and someone traveled to 10 different states, would the records from that be different or not different in relation to the cell site tower you're talking about for someone who stayed in one state? Their phone stayed in one state.
Right. So anytime there's movement, you're going out of state, the switch would also be typically in the other state as well. So that's kind of how that works. There's switches all throughout the United States. And then for every switch, there's several, could be 100 or more towers that are associated, probably more than 100 with each specific switch, just depending on the population density. And so I'm just going to give you an example. If I was on my phone and I left Georgia and I went north to New York, and I had been using my phone the entire time, getting on calls or whatever while I'm driving through my sync, of course. But anyways, every time you get on a call, it would then have the network information that would correlate with the switch and towers that are in those specific states that you're traveling through.
Now, I want to go back to what's contained in 515 Yankee. So do you see how there's 3 Excel spreadsheets?
Yes.
I'm going to open these and walk through them with you, starting from top to bottom. Now, when you were just describing the different tower information that would come back from a request, what is this Excel spreadsheet that's contained within 515 Yankee?
So this is the NEID list, or the switch information. And basically it's a list. On the record, it would have the identifying information, and you would have to refer to this list to be able to plot the latitude and longitude. So with the Sprint records, you have to look up the list, and then you would use the cell ID number to locate the latitude and longitude for each specific sector of a tower, essentially.
Now, what you see, this Excel is titled NEID 207.
Yes.
What does that mean, and what is after that title of this document?
Sure. So it's the network element ID, and then it's the name of that NEID, which is 207. And then it shows where that switch is in Miami. Typically, it's going to be where that switch is operating. It's the name of the list.
Now I want to show you, I'm going to open up another Excel that was in 515 Yankee, and I want you to describe for the jury. Let me know when this pops up. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
What switch location is this Excel spreadsheet associated with 515 Yankee?
So this one's Atlanta. It's number 176. So it's network element ID 176.
Now, finally, I'm going to publish the last Excel spreadsheet in 515 Yankee and ask you some questions about it.
Okay.
And while I'm pulling that up, you know how on the subscriber sheet it said status A? What does that mean on the different lines of the subscriber information page when it has status A?
It's active. And so if there was a cancellation, it would say status C.
What process goes into deactivating an account from the subscriber's end in these records that we're discussing?
It just depends. So it could be they stopped paying. It could be that they got a new phone and that would show activation cancellation. Or they said they were going to go to another carrier. There's all different variables, right?
Fair enough. Do you know what steps T-Mobile takes to deactivate an account on their end as the provider?
Same type of thing. I mean, those are all instances of how an account or number could get deactivated, right?
Understood. Now, I'm going to publish for you the last XL in 515 Yankee.
Okay.
Do you see this?
Yes.
Now, for purposes of, I'm going to increase the font here for you on this top row.
Okay.
Can you tell the jury in general while I'm doing that what these are?
Sure. So these are the columns. And basically it's interpreting the entire record in their column headers, right? The calling number is the number that's doing the calling. You can see at the bottom in green, that's the PTN or personal telephone number. That's the number that the record relates to, right? And then you have the called number and the dialed digits. So the called number is the number that's being called. And then it breaks it down. If there are no dialed digits, that's an indication that it's a text message, because the way that texts correlate with the records, they don't show the dialed digits because it goes through a text message gateway.
So with on that note, you see how these first roughly 10 columns are blank, and then you have numbers here in the column I've highlighted. What's the difference between, are these top ones text and this some type of phone call?
Correct. And it will allude to that later. But then you have the mobile roll column, which is identifying inbound would be a call coming in, outbound would be a call going out. There's another nuance that you might see in there that's routed. There's two types of routed calls. And generally, a routed call is going to have an inbound portion and a portion that's routed. It's when the receiver is outside of its normal coverage area and the switch is trying to locate that person or phone, essentially. And so it's being routed by a temporary local dialing number. And it's only on inbound calls or if a call goes to voicemail. Those are the instances where you'll see routed. And when you see a call that goes to voicemail, it will have like 6245 in parentheses, and the dialed or the called number column is where it would show up.
For a quick example of that, I'm going to move. Do you see the highlighted column to 14?
Yes.
And where it says routed call?
Yes.
Is this what you were just discussing for the jury?
Correct. So those two lines are paired together, essentially. It's all one transaction, but on the record, it shows two lines.
And do you mean what is listed as 14 and 15?
Yes.
Now, going to after that inbound, outbound, or routed column, can you describe for the jury or walk through? You have start date, end date, duration. Can you describe and walk through these for the jury?
Yes. And so the start date is the date and the time. The time's in military time. So that first transaction is like 1 minute after midnight and 20 seconds. Then it has the duration, as I spoke to earlier. There's no time involved in text, so it's always going to be 0. As far as talk time. And then So you have the start date and the end date. The duration would be 0. If it was a call or there was a network, it was attached to the network, it would then have time involved. And then it has the network element ID for those.
That's the NEID?
Correct. For those ones in 0, it's showing that number 198 or 194, 198. Those are all text message gateways. They're in that interpretation sheet that we looked at earlier, the key to understanding the information. All those are broken down in there. And then it coincides with the specific repo.
What is a repo number?
Basically the switch list, right?
Understood. Now, I want to ask you something. For Sprint records in 2015, what time zone were the records in or kept in?
So for any text message transactions within the Sprint record, it would be in Central Time. And so you would have to add an hour to get to Eastern Time.
What about for phone calls?
Phone calls are switch time. So wherever that switch was, that's where it would relate to.
So if you use the switch in Atlanta, Eastern Time, they would be in Eastern Time?
Correct.
And if you used a switch in Texas, Central Time, it would be Central Time?
That's correct.
And is it based on in these records, if this cell phone provider, which is attributed to Mr. Copeland, made a call and was in Eastern Time, would all of the calls be in Eastern Time or something else, regardless of who they dialed to?
It would be wherever the phone's being utilized. So it would go back to the switch information.
And if someone that was in, say, California called someone who was in Atlanta, how would the records on the Atlanta call providers come in? What time would come in for that incoming call?
Wherever that person is that's utilizing that number. So you'd have to have the records for the other number, but wherever the physical phone is connected to as far as the switch, that's where that would relate to the records.
So for someone who remained on Eastern Time, regardless of where they're receiving calls, their records would stay in Eastern Time.
Correct.
Now I want to go through just a couple more. What does this last 2 columns mean that says first cell and last cell?
Sure. So basically the first cell and the last cell breaks down. There's a series of numbers once you go past those zeros. 1 is the sector or side of the tower. And then 7848 on that first cell that we're looking at, it's the second line up, is the cell ID number. And so you would have to go to the list that we looked at earlier, which is 207, NEID list or repo 31. Look on the left-hand column for 7848. That's the cell number. And then look at the first input. That would give the exact information for that tower. And then it finalized on that tower. So it would be the same location for that tower information that you would physically see on that list.
Now, earlier you had mentioned if the duration is 0, it's a text. Is there any significance to this first cell, last cell columns having a 0 versus numbers?
Not for text, no.
So if it's a 0 here, does that mean it's a text?
Yes, but if the phone was off or out of battery and there was calls coming in, it would also show 0.
Understood. Now, would these records that we're walking through, would applications such as FaceTime or WhatsApp or Telegram show up in these documents?
No.
Now, do you have before you 516 Yankee Alpha.
Yes, I do.
Publishing 516 Yankee Alpha for the jury. Now, who made this request for 516 Yankee Alpha?
So it's Kevin Leon Pacher. I guess that's how that's pronounced.
Leon
Sounds
Packer?
French. Yeah, or Leon Packer.
And are they with, what agency were they with when they made the request?
Atlanta Police Department.
And what is the phone number that was requested?
The number is 470-262-2643.
What was the date that these records were provided to the Atlanta Police Department that made the request?
The date that they were provided was, let me look here. It was August 28th of 2015.
Now I want to turn to page 2. What records were, or let me start with this. I'm going to go to the middle of page 2. What is the account name associated with these records?
So the account name is Kelvin Treadwell.
And what was the request? Do you see where it has request type in bold?
Yes.
What all was requested?
So there were several things that were requested. It was subscriber information, call detail records with cell site, and then the per call measurement data.
What was the date range for the call detail records with the cell site for this phone number?
It was January 1st, 2015 through August 26th of 2015.
Now, what date was this account established?
The account was established on February 14th of 2014.
And was this a prepaid or postpaid account?
It was postpaid.
And what page are you on to determine that? Is that page
3?
3? On page 3, is it near where it has equipment?
Correct. Above equipment, it goes back to sprintpcs.com.
Now, was there any changes in this account in terms of cancellations, activations, or anything of that nature?
Yes. So there was a phone change, like the handset changed on July 29 of 2015. One handset was canceled and then another one started.
Now, the records we just walked through that had the duration, the different columns we walked through with the jury, is these records also Sprint?
Yes.
Does the call detail records associated with 516, are they in the same format of what we just walked through with the jury?
Yes.
So the Excel spreadsheet would have the same data columns for this phone number.
Same type of information, just relating to the other number.
Now I want to turn to 517 Yankee Alpha. Is that also a Sprint record, 517 Yankee Alpha?
Yes, it is.
Publishing 517 Yankee Alpha for the jury. Now, who made this request for the records in 517 Yankee Alpha?
It was L. Gaither with the Atlanta Police Department.
What was the date that these records were returned to Detective Gaither with Atlanta Police Department?
It was May 28th of 2015.
Now, turning to page 2, what was requested by Detective Gaither with these records?
The cell site information with the call detail records, along with subscriber information for the date range of January 10th, 2015 through May 20th of 2015.
Now, do you see on account details?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury if this is pre or postpaid account?
So it's a prepaid account, and basically it's a reseller. The reseller name is Red Pocket. basically resellers lease lines from the parent company, which in this case is Sprint, and they lease blocks of lines and operate their prepaid business. So if there were any subscriber information, you would have to get it from that specific reseller.
And for these records, were call detail records with the disc that you reviewed for 517 Yankee, were there call detail records that were returned for this cell phone?
Yes.
Ending in 5726, and would it have the same columns as the first two Sprint records we just discussed with the jury?
Absolutely. It's the same information. It's our network information. It's just being, and that's why we were able to respond to the request. But basically, it just is because it's a prepaid and it's operating through the reseller. If there were any subscriber information, they would have that.
Now, let me ask you this. When requests are made, if I requested from January 1st till December 31st of a year, would I ever get more or less records from T-Mobile or Sprint that I requested? And if so, why?
So we're only able to give what is asked for. I'm not saying humans don't make mistakes, but it could happen where more information was given than they were supposed to, but we have to divulge that information if that's the case. And so it could have less depending on if the phone was being utilized. Say the date range was for a year, but they stopped using the phone in September. Then you wouldn't have the rest of the 3 months, right? So that's a thing too. But yeah, we would provide everything that we had for that specific date range.
Now, I want to turn to 518 Yankee and 518 Yankee Alpha. Is that T-Mobile records versus Sprint?
Yes.
And I want to discuss what is the last four of 518 Yankee Alpha?
The telephone number?
Yes, sir.
It is 7604.
And Your Honor, I'm publishing 518 Yankee Alpha for the jury. Who is, I should say, what is the billing name for this account?
So the billing name is Trey Brock.
Is it Trez Brock?
Yes.
And what agency or who made this request?
So it was requested by Michael Sprinkle at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office.
When was this requested information provided to Mr. Sprinkle?
October 26th of 2016.
And for these records, what was requested?
Subscriber information and call detail records were requested.
Were cell tower information requested for this number?
Yes, that was included in the cell records.
And do you know if this was a pre or postpaid account?
It's prepaid.
And what was the date that this account was activated?
The account activation date was April 10th of 2013.
Now, I want to publish 519 Yankee Alpha. Do you have that before you?
Yes.
Is this also T-Mobile records?
Yes, it is.
Now, who made this request for 519 Yankee Alpha?
It was made by the David Razy with the Cobb County Police Department.
When were these records provided to Detective Racy with Cobb County?
On January 16th of 2016.
What is the last four of this phone number that Detective Racy requested?
It's 9596.
Now, what is the subscriber name for this particular record?
The subscriber name is Dorothea Greer.
what is under, do you see where it says device details?
Yes.
I'm going to scroll down. What is the MSISDN name indicate?
That's the MISDN or telephone number.
And what is the account details name for this, or subscriber details at the top?
It's Kendra Cohen.
What is the reason, or what's the difference between subscriber details and this device details name?
So this is basically an account that Kendra Cohen opened up, but there was a number that was being associated with the account. You could have multiple telephone numbers under one account, and the name that they gave for that specific telephone number was Dorothea Greer as the person using the number.
Now, what was the date range requested for this 9596 number?
I'd have to look at the actual request. It doesn't show the exact date range in the T-Mobile subscriber info.
Understood. Now, is there any activation or cancellation for this phone number?
So the activation date was February 16th of 2012 for the account. And then the termination date was April 28th of 2015.
What was the disconnect reason?
It doesn't give a reason for the disconnect other than it was canceled.
Do you see under device details the MSISDN disconnect reason column in the middle of the page?
Oh, at the customer request. So the customer requested it.
Now, initially we talked about T-Mobile records. Sprint records, is the call detail records and cell site tower for T-Mobile, is it in the same or different format?
It's a totally different format. With T-Mobile, the cell tower information's on the call detail record. You don't have to go to a separate list to be able to view that information and correlate the two. It's on the record itself. It does give an address. The address is really there for engineering purposes to locate where that tower is located. If you were to plot the information, you would want to use the latitude and longitude. It still has the same identifying information within the record as you would see on the Sprint records as far as the different components of the cell tower.
Now, I'm going to publish the call detail records contained within 519 Yankee.
Okay.
Do you see this on the screen?
Yes.
And can you describe, these columns and what they indicate for the jury? I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you.
I can.
Are the first two the date and time of the calls?
Yeah, it's just in a little bit of different order, but it's the date, time, the times in military time.
What about the time zone?
So in order to get it to the time zone, these records are kept in universal coordinated time, which mirrors Greenwich Mean Time. You have to do a conversion. And so to get to Eastern time, it would be either -4 hours or -5 hours. It just depends on if it's daylight saving time or standard time. So it would be less in daylight saving time and be -4. It would be more if it was after we turn the clocks back.
Now, you see how there's this duration column?
Yes.
What does it mean if the duration is blank, and can you explain that for the jury?
It just depends. And so they're different records from Sprint. It doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, but it could be that it's a text message, but not. The duration is the total time that it was connected to the network. You have the call type, which is a mobile outgoing call. So that's definitely a call outgoing, even though it has no duration time.
What does this, like, do you see call type that's highlighted?
Yes.
What is MOC, MTC? What does that mean?
So I just explained MOC is mobile outgoing call. MTC is mobile terminating call. So outgoing call would be outgoing from that record holder. Terminating would be a call that ended with the record holder. So it terminated at that number. And then it tells you basically in the next column, the directionality. So outgoing is out from the phone. Incoming would be incoming to the phone. If it was a call that went to voicemail, it would have an inbound portion and an outbound portion. It would have two portions, kind of like what I talked about earlier with the Sprint stuff and the routed thing. It would have two portions, and it could say call forwarding, but it's forwarded to the voicemail platform.
And are the next columns delineating the calling number, the dialed number?
Right. And so you have the calling number, the number that was dialed, the called number, and the destination number. Typically, the called number and the destination number is going to be the same thing, but it could have like a 1 in the area code. It would show what was actually dialed in that dialed number column.
What is the IMSI, IMEI column?
So that's the International Mobile Subscriber Identity that coincides with the target number. It's part of T-Mobile's record keeping that correlates the record with the telephone number, the record holder. And then the IMEI is the International Mobile Equipment ID. That is the serial number essentially for the phone that's operating in tandem with the telephone number.
And what are these completion code? What does, you see how at the top, or I'll highlight it, it has abnormal completion. What does that mean or could mean?
So it's a call that was on the network, but it wasn't completed. It was not a completed transaction for whatever reason.
Understood.
It could have been that the call didn't go through. It was an attempted call, but it didn't complete. And then if it was completed, it shows on there, of course, completed successfully.
Is the answered column if the phone call was answered, unanswered?
Correct.
And is the service code, what, without going through all of them, what are some examples of what this service code column indicates?
Yeah. So like 11 is an example, like that the calling number was viewable, right? If it had a 12, it would be restricted. 2A means that it was a call that went to voicemail, essentially. And that would make sense because it wasn't answered, right? And so if it said 2B, it would be a call that goes to voicemail that was not reachable. It went to voicemail as well. And so all these different codes are in the keys to understanding the information. So that help aid that is sent out, it's all broken down in there, as well as it would indicate the different columns and the information that's held within the call detail records.
The disconnecting party, the party that ended the call, is that fair?
Correct, the calling party, right?
Is there anything significant in terms of cell site tower information or call detail records from the service indicator or SMS delivery status column?
No, the specific is the switch that's given the switch that handled the transaction. And then it gives the information for that specific switch, the site ID that would go to the tower that is actually conducting the call.
And then you had mentioned, you see how it says switch name and then first LTE site ID?
Correct.
Is the switch name, is that correspond with where the switch that made this phone, the T-Mobile switch that made this phone call, or what does that mean?
Right. That's the switch that conducted the call. And then the the site ID correlates with the specific tower information.
And then with this column that has azimuth, lat, and long, what is that the azimuth of or the lat long of?
The tower information.
That call used?
Right. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Generally speaking, cell towers are three-sided. So there would be three different inputs. You will see that on the Sprint side, but on this record, because it's included within the record, it's just showing the azimuth or the midpoint for that specific sector that the radio frequency bounced off of from that cell tower or antenna. Essentially, your phone just emanates a radio frequency. It bounces off this antenna. That's where it's received. The receiving antenna then shows the latitude and longitude. From that latitude and longitude, you would actually be able to plot where that tower was. It wouldn't give you the exact location of where that handset was, but it's going to give you the tower that received the call.
And is that type of information regularly kept in T-Mobile's course of business?
Yes.
Now, was there also some records that I had discussed, the business record certs?
Yes.
So I wanted to publish 520 Yankee Alpha. Do you have that before you?
Yes.
What is the name, or let me ask you this, what are the last four associated with 520 Yankee Alpha? And I'm publishing that for the jury, Your Honor. 520 Yankee Alpha, sir.
It's the number ending in 8008.
Who is the subscriber name associated with this?
The subscriber name is Javaris Bradford.
And what was the account effective date for this?
So the account effective date is May 5th of 2014.
Who made this request?
The requesting party was Daryl Browning, or that was the respondent. Hold on a second. It was David White with the Office of the Fulton County District Attorney.
And when were these records for the 8008 returned to David White with the Fulton County DA's office?
June 13th of 2016.
And what was do you see that above the subscriber details column beneath the provided on date, that sentence where it has the search warrant? What was the date that this request was responding to?
It was in response to a search warrant that was dated on May 16, 2016.
And what is there at the very bottom for device details? What does the MDN effective date or MDN expiration date mean?
So for that specific phone, it was effective October 6, 2015 through December 5th of 2015.
And that phone model, what does that mean? BYOD iPhone?
Bring your own device iPhone.
Understood. Now, do you have 521 Yankee Alpha before you?
Yes.
Is that T-Mobile or Sprint?
It's Sprint.
I'm publishing 521 Yankee Alpha, Your Honor. Who requested, or let me ask you this, what are the last four of 521 Yankee Sprint records of that cell phone?
The number is, last four is 3145.
And who requested these Sprint cell phone records?
David White with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office.
What was the date of David White's request?
When did we send it out?
Correct.
It was June 25th of 2016.
And what is the name associated with this account?
The subscriber name is Monica Cobb.
And what was the date range for this request?
The date range was from January 1st, 2015 through January 31st of 2015.
When was this account established date?
The account, give me 1 second, was established on December 19 of 2003.
And was this prepaid or postpaid?
Give me 1 second. It was a postpaid subscriber, a billed subscriber.
And was call detail records with cell site requested?
Yes.
Was call detail records with cell site received by the requesting party, David White?
Yes.
Now, would these call detail records and cell site correspond with the T-Mobile columns that we walked through?
Sprint?
Or sorry, my apologies. Yes, the first columns we walked through, the first Excel was Sprint.
Correct. They would have the same information just for a different telephone number. And so it would be in the same format as the other Sprint records that we looked at earlier.
Now, you also have before you 522 Yankee Alpha.
Yes.
Is that T-Mobile or Sprint?
It is T-Mobile.
I'm going to publish 522 Yankee Alpha for the jury, Your Honor. Now, who made or what are the last four of this cell phone number requested?
The last four are 3904.
Who made this request?
The request was David White was the requester with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office.
When did the records get returned to David White?
It would have been...
Or when were they provided, I should ask?
On June 13th of 2016.
Now, what was the subscriber name?
The subscriber name was Kendra Cohen, was the actual account holder. And the subscriber name was Young Money.
Is there any activation or cancellation with this account?
Give me 1 second.
Or let me ask this. When was the account effective date?
So the account effective date was December 26th of 2014. And then the account expired or expiration date was April 24th of 2015.
And what was the date range requested for these records?
It's not on this request. It would have been in the body of the search warrant.
With the call detail records associated with this, if we looked at the first row and the last row, would that tell us the date range of?
It would give you an approximation, right?
Publishing, Your Honor, 522 Yankee, the call detail records. Now, sir, can you see what the date is for the first call in these records?
It's January 5th of 2015.
Okay. And what is the date in column 614 to 615?
January 15th of 2015.
One brief moment, Your Honor. Your Honor, may I briefly approach with member of defense? Now, earlier I'd asked you about Sprint or T-Mobile records not tracking different applications in these call detail records from Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, something like that. Why are they not captured in these records?
That's a form of data. And so this is the network information. If data information was asked for, it could show up in those types of records. But with the actual call detail records and cell site information, there would be no data involved in that.
And from 2015 until 2024 today, has there been any change in the towers that T-Mobile or what once was Sprint had? Have they increased, decreased, stayed the same in terms of towers in the network?
So the network's stronger now because we essentially migrated all the Sprint information into T-Mobile. There's not really much more I can say about that other than it's a stronger network now than it was when both companies were operating on their own.
Understood. And when we had discussed subscriber information, is there any reason that it says basic subscriber information? Is there any other type of records associated with subscriber information, or why is it referred to that way?
Yeah. So we can only give what is asked for. And so several years ago, Sprint had made a change that we would only give out the expanded subscriber information if it was asked for through legal process. And expanded versus basic is it would be the account details that has the social security number involved. Keeping that type of information in-house is a big deal. We don't want those types of things going out. And so we would only send that information if it was asked for. And so that would be the difference. So basically, if a request came in and it was basic, it wouldn't be the expanded subscriber information. So it wouldn't include the date of birth, the social security number. Like those would be things that weren't sent out.
One brief moment, Your Honor. Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All right, defense questions for this witness.
Sir, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yes.
Do you ever have you ever encountered your records showing a certain duration for a call, and then the call goes to a different provider's record? So it's calling from one phone, your company, to another company. You understand what I'm asking you so far?
Yes.
And they have different times for duration. Can you explain that to the jury, if you come across that?
So I don't really compare other carriers. There could be a slight variation, but I just mainly look at the records for my specific company, right? But there could be some type of maybe a minimal amount of time that's different.
What would be minimal? And we have an example.
Seconds. I don't know.
We're talking 10, 15, 20 seconds difference, or you're talking 2 seconds difference?
Like I said, I don't work for another carrier. I've worked for these two. And when you're comparing phone calls, there could be some type of network reception. So it could be different depending on, you're talking about two different networks correlating with two different transactions, but it's the same, right? And so the way one carrier keeps their information could be slightly different than the other carrier. So I can't tell you why.
Okay. The azimuth, it's AZIMUTH, I believe.
Correct.
Can you explain what that is to the jury?
I can. So the azimuth is the midpoint for the sector. Generally speaking, cell towers have 3 sectors, and they would show the directionality of where the radio frequency was bouncing off of that specific sector. So basically the azimuth is the middle part of the sector. I kind of look at it like this. Like if you looked at a clock, 12 is 0 and 360, right? On a compass. And so 120 would be at 4 o'clock. If 120 degrees was that sector, the midpoint would be 60. So that would be the azimuth. That's just one example.
How do you know in these records that you have just talked about, how do you know whether there's 3 sectors in these records that the jurors are about to see and get explained?
So on the Sprint records, they're on basically the list to interpret the information. It's all in there. The T-Mobile records just show the azimuth for that specific tower. So they're 2 different things, right? T-Mobile has it on the record. Sprint shows all the sectors on the key that coincides with the records.
Okay.
So the engineering aspects, that would be, you'd have to have the actual master list to see how that for T-Mobile how that orientation was, if it was multiple sectors or an omni antenna, which would be one, right? So it doesn't discount what actually transpired because it shows on the record for T-Mobile.
And then my last series of questions on that clock example you just gave with the 1, the 4, I don't know if you said, but the 8 o'clock would be the next one. 3 sectors. Is that fair to say?
If that's how that tower was oriented.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Explain that to the jury because it can rotate depending upon how the tower is built. Is that all true?
Right. So the sectors are, once they're made, they can be changed, but generally you're going to have one sector covering an area that's approximately 120 degrees. All 3 of them would make up 360 degrees, which would be the 0 and the 12, right? And so they're oriented differently depending on, I'm not an engineer. I just know this from everything that I've done over the years with these records, right? Over 20 years of working with these. But they're orientated for reception, population density, right? The way that they're set up is all predicated by that azimuth. And so that gives the midpoint for each one of those sectors. The records are only going to show the one azimuth for that specific tower that was the radio frequency was bouncing off of.
How do we know the rotation of that specific cell tower from these records without going out to the actual tower on the actual date?
Like I said, that's giving you the midpoint for the one specific tower on the T-Mobile records. On the Sprint records, it will show all of them.
Right, but the rotation, how the cell tower
It's not rotating, it's staying in one position.
Understood, but when it's built, it could be different. For Tower 1, we can have a perfect clock with the first, I'll call it alpha.
That's right.
Well, let me just finish the question. Alpha between 0 and 4 o'clock, or 12 and 4 o'clock. Beta would be 4 to 8. Gamma would be 8 to 12. But on the
generally speaking, that's how it would be set up.
But on the next tower, it may be, and I'm making this up, 2 o'clock.
That's right.
Till 6 o'clock. I think I did that right. Would be the alpha and et cetera. True?
That could happen.
Okay.
It's still going to be on the record.
Okay. Perfect. That's all. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other defense questions for this witness? No one? Any redirect?
Very briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
When on cross, when you were asked questions about the azimuth and the data in these records.
Correct.
With the records from either Sprint or T-Mobile that we discussed, is the data needed to plot, is the location of the tower information contained in these call detail records with cell site information that we have?
Yes, within both carriers' records, right? Both Sprint and T-Mobile's information. The information is revealed for the latitude and longitude along with the azimuth for every pertinent call that was attached to the network.
With the records that were received back?
That's correct. That's correct.
One brief moment, Your Honor. And is the latitude and longitude of the tower location contained in these records for either Sprint or T-Mobile?
Yes. So the latitude and longitude is there. You would have to use some type of mapping software to be able to see it on a map, but it does give the exact location of where each tower is located. As I spoke to earlier, you don't want to use the address that's there on the address line, because that could be an address that is utilized to locate the tower. It could be in a farmer's backyard. It could be anywhere, right? And so the Latin long is what you would need to use, as well as the azimuth to get the directionality. And then you would be able to see an estimation of where the radio frequency was bouncing off of, but it would give you the exact location of the tower.
Thank you, sir. No
You're
further
welcome.
questions, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Steele, based on that? All right. Thank you for your time. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And I think given the time we're at now, and I'm sure people are wondering how hard it's raining outside, since we're apparently potentially getting only Category 1 right now, but hurricane may be heading in our direction. We'll go ahead and break for this evening. And I have gotten word in the last little bit that a determination has been made to close the courthouse tomorrow. So we will not be in trial tomorrow. And I don't have any word for Friday yet.